Hey world, my name is Keith and you are watching Keith's Universe. I've often made the point that the transgender community is one of the most discriminated groups here in the West. So I come to you today as a trans ally to speak out against all of the wrongs that they have all too often had to endure. From the ignorant sniggers that they have to endure when walking down the streets, attacks of violence and the mindless murders of trans persons. I want to speak out because trans lives are valid and they matter too. The most detailed analysis outlining the violence towards transgender individuals is the 2015 Transgender Survey. According to this survey, 46% of the respondents were verbally harassed. 47% of respondents have been sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. 10% of the respondents in the survey were sexually assaulted in the past year. 54% of respondents experienced some form of intimate partner violence. In addition to that, a recent article published by NBC just last March, compared to just last year, there has been a massive increase in trans violence and murders by a whopping 266%. That is downright shocking. Stop and think about that for a moment. These are murders and hate crimes that have more than doubled within a year. How much hatred does one have to have in their hearts in order to end someone's life just because of who they are, because of how they identify? This is not okay. These are human beings who've had lives of their own, families of their own, loved ones. When it comes to trans youth, even the most accepting of parents who have no problem having a transgender child, have no problem supporting a transgender child, they still have concerns regarding their transgender child. And that concern does not revolve around any ideologies of quote unquote, is this normal, is this dignified, is this acceptable, and so on. For the most part, the concerns of an actual loving and accepting parent is going to fall on the lines of, how is my child going to be treated? Are they going to be treated as less than? Are their lives going to be put in danger? So when it comes to the parents of these transgender individuals, these are the type of thoughts that most likely run through their minds every single day. And they are a constant worry. So let's say a transgender person is murdered. What exactly do you think their parents, family, and other loved ones are going through when they realize this has happened? How do you think that affects them? Don't you think the fact that their lives have been stolen like this through murder, that this is in fact their parents' worst nightmare and worst fears been actualized? Trans people are human beings too. Just like you and I or anyone else, they too have people in their lives who care for them. Even if it's not a parent, for those who are not fortunate enough to have parents in their lives to support them, it may be a sibling, it may be another relative, or it may simply be a close friend. So to anyone who is transphobic out there, I have this to say to you. It is bad enough that you are bigoted towards transgender individuals and you treat them as second-class citizens, but if you can't at the very least have some sort of compassion or consideration for the families of those transgender individuals who have either been murdered or assaulted, if you can't at least have compassion for their families, their friends, and other loved ones, I don't know what else to tell you apart from the fact that you have a lot to answer for and probably need to do a lot of soul searching, because that is so utterly dehumanizing. We need to stop thinking of trans people as a them. And when I say them, I am not referring to a pronoun, I am referring to this ideology of us versus them. To that end, we should instead think of trans individuals as an us. Or better yet, we shouldn't even waste our time on this fallacy of us versus them. It is a corrosive mentality, a mentality with one intention only, and that is to divide. We've got to do better, and quite frankly, we can do better. There is a rather chilling article published by NBCPhiladelphia.com. It covers the stories of two transgender women who were brutally murdered. The first case dates back to last March, which concerns a 32-year-old trans woman who was murdered in her own home. Her clothes were ripped off her body before she was repeatedly stabbed to death. By the time the police arrived at her home, the woman ran down the stairs covered in blood to then collapse at the police officer's feet. Then back in September of last year, a transgender woman, Maya Green, was murdered. She was shot in the back of her head while sitting in her car at a traffic stop. Can you even imagine that? These trans people can not only not be safe in their own homes, but they can't even be safe while sitting in their car while waiting for the traffic lights to turn green. This is insane. It's beyond insane. This simply should not be happening. No human being deserves to be hunted down like this. A serious social change is needed. We have got to change our attitudes towards transgender persons. This discrimination is not okay. This violence is not okay. These murders are definitely not okay. There is a very touching documentary style video right here on YouTube by Vice News. It's called Violence Against Black Trans Women is One of the US's Deadliest Epidemics. If you can watch that video without feeling anything for Kendrell Stevens, her story and her pursuit of justice for the murder of her friend Dominique Foles, if you feel nothing after that, you've lost all sight of what it means to be human, to have a heart and to have compassion for others. Because I gotta tell you, watching that video for me was not easy. And I'm not trans, but I don't think you should need to be. Because watching that video, you really do get a sense of just how hurt Kendrell is. No matter what, she just keeps fighting for what's right, and for even a basic sense of justice. So I encourage you to check that video out. It's an eye-opening piece, to say the least. The link for that docu-video is down below in the description box, along with everything else that I have referenced. If you look for any case online regarding trans violence and trans murders, you will see that the very vast majority of these cases, of these victims, are trans black women. One such resource outlining this is the 2019 report by HRC, Human Rights Campaign. So essentially this report itself is a list of all of the trans women who were murdered in 2019. And most of these women are trans women of color. Now that is not to say that if they were not trans women of color that this will be by any means less tragic, but simply to highlight that trans women of color are demonstrably more likely to be a victim. But like I said, we have got to have a much more positive, compassionate and open attitude towards trans persons. A very serious social change is much needed because they are people. And we should never forget that they are people. When it comes to trans individuals, we need to stop dehumanizing, we need to stop discriminating, we need to stop manipulating, we need to stop vilifying them. So to all of the trans people out there, I think you are so amazing. I think you are so brave and so fierce. I mean, it can't be easy for you to truly embrace your most authentic selves in the face of so much bigotry and hostility. So for what it's worth, you have my support, you have my respect. Freedom, peace, and love.